Welcome back. How much funding does Planned Parenthood get? According to the organization, it receives more than $500 million each year from the federal government. 3/4 of that money comes from Medicaid. Abortion makes up 3% of its funding. Last month, Texas health officials blocked Planned Parenthood from receiving Medicaid funding. Ohio lawmakers also cut more than $1.2 million worth of federal funds. Could something similar happen here in Florida? Joining us for more is Mary Klepper, the state committee woman for the Sarasota County Democratic Party. She is also the president of the Democratic Club of Sarasota. And Christian Ziegler, state committee man for the Republican Party of Sarasota County. Thank you both for being here, because this is boy, it doesn't get more hot button, more passionate than this. You know, Christian, what Planned Parenthood would say is that it does provide some very essential health care services for women aside from abortions. You know, affordable contraception to nearly 2.5 million patients, 1 million cervical cancer screenings, 830,000 million breast exams, nearly 4 million tests and treatment for sexually transmitted infections, including 500,000 HIV tests. Isn't that worthwhile services for this community and other communities?
Look, when you look at Planned Parenthood, that's obviously always a talking point that they throw out there, but there's actually 22 comprehensive health clinics for every one Planned Parenthood across this country. And I would argue that those clinics can really pick up those services, right? Planned Parenthood, the biggest issue is that we're sending federal tax dollars, we're sending state tax dollars to this organization that's also killing over 323,000 babies every single year, which is the population of the city of Tampa, if you look at it, very close. So I think that's the issue that conservatives and that Republicans have is, why are we sending over $500 million to an organization that their primary motivating factor when it comes to revenue and everything is abortions? Because that's where they make the most money for their organization.
Mary, is that true? Is the primary mission of Planned Parenthood abortion services?
No. The primary mission of Planned Parenthood is making sure that women have access to good health care. And most Americans do support access to Planned Parenthood and do want us as a country to have safe and legal abortion.
But the argument that you most often hear from people like Christian is that these services can be provided elsewhere at other places that don't provide abortion services and therefore don't have that conflict of mission.
Well, if you look at the lists of those other types of places that are getting federal funding in Florida, a lot of them are not providing women's reproductive health care. There's not as many as you would think. You look at that list, there's dentists, there's school nurses on that list, and Planned Parenthood exists to provide those health care services for women.
Christian, I saw you were shaking your head there. Are there enough places that provide these kind of services, from mammograms to pap smears and so forth, that if you eliminated Planned Parenthood from the equation, that there would be enough doctors and medical professionals?
Absolutely. And I think when you look at and you go look at the research and you look up these different clinics, and I've done that research, even in Sarasota County here, there's plenty of organizations that can pick up the slack if Planned Parenthood wasn't involved. And you know, one thing that I offered to Planned Parenthood is I said, hey, why don't we kind of meet in the middle? No taxpayer dollars until you separate the abortion services from the other services. Let's have a different building, let's have different facilities. And that's the thing with Planned Parenthood is they say, oh, no tax dollars come in and go directly to abortions. But the truth is, taxpayer dollars are paying for that room, they're paying for that air conditioning, they're paying for the lights, for the bed. All of that money is covered.
Mary, you went to the jump in.
The funding that Planned Parenthood gets, it's not like a certain budgetary amount. It is reimbursement for preventative health services, such as pap tests, STI screenings. So it isn't
but
that
you're still
they're
subsidizing,
giving a blank check.
You're still
it's for
subsidizing
specific procedures.
But the way they bill is you're still subsidizing the different instruments, the different facilities, the costs, the overhead costs, and all of that is looped together because in the same facility they're providing abortions in addition to these other services.
Well, let me ask you this. If you separated the function at Planned Parenthood from abortion services to all the other health care issues, wouldn't you be adding to the overhead costs to run this organization?
But again, when taxpayer dollars are in play, it's a moral decision at that point, right? Because I just morally think abortion's wrong. That's just my personal opinion. And when we have
that.
Well, but that's correct. But that's my point here, is the organization should be able to support itself instead of taking money out of my paycheck. Every single paycheck, I go and work, I have kids, I need to put them through college, I need to pay their bills. There's no reason why dollars out of my paycheck, when I disagree with this organization, should be put into an organization that's, again, killing over 323,000 babies every single year. That's every year. And I think that's a tragedy, and I don't think taxpayers should be supporting that organization.
If we look at Florida and we talk about, are there other places that women can go, 78% of the Planned Parenthood clinics in Florida are in rural areas and in medically underserved areas. So Planned Parenthood is needed.
But that's an issue for these, if you look at these rural areas and these low-income areas, and again, Planned Parenthood, when you look at the way they're making their money, I think 86% of their non-government revenue comes from abortions. And this is a big deal when you look at these with Planned Parenthood. They're motivated. Any business, you're going to go for your biggest moneymaker. You're going to drive customers towards that. And that's exactly what Planned Parenthood's doing. I'll tell you, I went online to try to test them and see what they would do. And I went on their chat and I said, hey, I'm thinking about getting an abortion. The chat response that I got was not, hey, we have some adopting services that we can connect you with. We'd like to bring you in and we'd like to consult with you and give you. What they said was, let's sign you up for an abortion. This is what we can do.
We are just getting started here. We have much more of this debate coming up, along with a check on our forecast, so stay with us. Welcome back. Congress is back in session, and once again, Republicans are in control, but this time they can look forward to a Republican executive branch under Donald Trump. What does that mean for Planned Parenthood? Our guests tonight are Mary Klepper, the state committee woman for the Sarasota County Democratic Party, and Christian Ziegler, the state committee man for the Republican Party of Sarasota. I want to get to that in just a moment, but Mary, I think you wanted to respond to something that Christian said.
Well, when Christian was giving statistics about 86% of the funding going towards abortions, and that, I think that paints, you're looking at a certain part of the numbers, but I think that paints an inaccurate picture when you look at everything, all the services that Planned Parenthood provides. If we just look at Florida, last year they served over 70,000 patients. 61,000 of those were tested for STIs. 46,000 were helped to get contraception. They performed 16,000 breast exams, just under 10,000 Pap tests. When we say that Planned Parenthood is helping save women's lives, that is the way in which they are doing that, with cancer screenings and helping them find out what other health care treatment that they need.
But again, my point on that is 86%. This is a fact from their own tax records. 86% of non-government revenue, so what they're not being subsidized on, comes from abortions. That's a fact. That's from Planned Parenthood's own tax records.
But Planned Parenthood does say its federal funds do not go to abortion, that they are audited, and that is not something that's in question.
Yeah, but again, that money's coming in and it's paying for the building, it's paying for the devices, it's paying for the different machinery that they have, and it's subsidizing the organization. And that's the problem with lumping it all together, is they can say that internally they separate it, but it's just not true.
It's reimbursement for a specific procedure that has a
let me ask
cost
you this question,
associated
because
with it.
in Kate's story, you had Donald Trump basically saying two things: that he is pro-life and therefore does not like the work of Planned Parenthood, but he also loves the work of Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
And now it will be his decision.
Well, it will be, and it'll also be the decision of Congress, right? They need to meet, and Congress eventually needs to put up some bills, and they need to either remove them from the funding or add the funding in there. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the House and a lot of pressure on the Senate. What Donald Trump does at the end of the day, I mean, hopefully he's going to defund this organization and remove the taxpayer dollars, because I think that it's just the right thing to do.
Mary, you know, as we've been talking about here, the Republicans now control the House, the Senate, and the White House. If people care dearly about this issue, they certainly did not vote on the basis of it.
I agree, and I think there's going to be a lot of remorse from women when they realize this. And I think that's going to be a big inspiration when we start seeing things roll back for people to be active.
You can make the argument that this is not something that Americans struggle with enough to affect how they vote.
I think a lot of people aren't paying attention to details like this. And I think our last election shows that.
So what do you do now? What do Democrats do? Because people may regret this, but obviously the issue in general is not shown itself to be enough of a motivator to get people to the polls or to vote for the Democrat.
Well, it may have an influence on future elections when we see the results of what may happen with the Trump administration.
Christian, is there any possibility in your mind that Republicans can overreach on this issue? Because both sides can argue in terms of whether or not Americans favor abortion rights. Most polls show that they do with some limitation. They certainly don't want all abortions made illegal.
I don't think the Republicans can overreach on this. I mean, when you look at an organization like Planned Parenthood, people say they're in the women's health, business, they're in the abortion business. You could also make the argument that they're in the political business because they've given over $25 million to candidates. So when you look at it, I think over 99.5% of those donations went to Democrats. So I would encourage Republicans. I don't think there's any damage that can be done by really going after Planned Parenthood because this, again, is an organization. We're still not talking about the main issue here, and that's over 320,000 babies are killed every single year by Planned Parenthood, and it's a moral issue that our society, and I truly feel that in 50 years from now, people are going to look back at today, and they're going to say, what were they thinking? What was society thinking when they were turning a blind eye and allowing this to happen?
So what is your response when Planned Parenthood says that they do more than any other organization in the country to prevent abortions by being the single largest provider of birth control and family planning and sex education in the U.S.?
And again, when you look at the way the organization's set up, when 86% of your non-government revenue, your biggest moneymaker when you talk about the different procedures that they do is abortion, just as in any business, you're pushing your consumers to whatever the moneymaker is in your organization. That's what Planned Parenthood does with abortion. And again, that's why when I went on their website and I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing an abortion, all they did was push me towards an abortion. They didn't offer any other services. So I think that's some talking points that they have to smooth over what they're doing. I don't think it's a legitimate argument.
I think you ought to get out there and talk to real women that have benefited from what Planned Parenthood offers. And I'm very grateful to Planned Parenthood. When I was in college, I heard about them and learned that I could go there and get birth control. And I think that had a huge impact on my life, and that I was able to get that care that I needed and that advice, and I didn't have to go through the awful decision of what to do had I had a pregnancy that I didn't want, because Planned Parenthood was there when I was young and didn't really know what I should do.
With that same point, I would encourage you to talk to females that have made the decision to abort and they've regretted it the rest of their lives because it just hurt them emotionally going forward. I have someone very close to me, very close immediate family member that went through an abortion, and there's not a day that goes by that they don't think about it or are affected by it. So I have talked to the women, but again, this goes back to the issue of our tax dollars should not be going to this organization. I firmly believe that.
So what do supporters of Planned Parenthood do at this point in terms of messaging or organization to overcome what the math is right now, Congress and the White House?
Well, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be tough. Planned Parenthood has seen the patients increase since the election. They've seen more volunteers come forward because people are concerned, and they've seen their donations go up. So I think we will continue to see this as the reality of things that could get rolled back starts to happen in the next 4 years.
And if their donations are going up, that's even more of a reason that tax dollars shouldn't be going to them.
Well, let me ask you this question. If Planned Parenthood could survive based upon a reduction or an elimination of federal tax subsidies, would you be fine with that while you battle out the whole issue of abortion rights in the country?
Well, I don't think a dollar should be going to Planned Parenthood from the taxpayers. So once we remove that, I'd be pretty happy, right? But then we have that second discussion, which needs to occur, is what do we think about abortion? And again, I tell you, in 50 years, we're going to be looking back and we're going to say, what were they thinking? Why were they turning a blind eye to the killing of unborn, innocent children?
I don't think so.
There are a lot of other issues that you personally may have moral objection to that the federal government funds. Should the federal government stop funding all things that people have moral objections to?
Well, I think when you talk about an issue that's as deep and as moral as life, I think that's a big issue. I mean, when you look at life and, you look at the way the Bill of Rights and our Constitution is given, people in there, right in there, it says life, right at the beginning, right? First sentence. And I think when you look at that issue, it's an important issue. And again, no one is talking about these babies. They're not humanizing this issue, and it is a human issue.
It's about the woman being able to make that decision. It should be between her doctor, her family, her pastor if she chooses that. That's what why I stand with Planned Parenthood, and when I advocate for them, that's what I'm fighting for.
But they made the decision to conceive, and once that decision to conceive happens, now we have a responsibility and a duty and a moral obligation to protect that life. And that's just my personal belief. And again, I think it's something where the public needs to have that discussion, and then we need to have a debate and we need to have a vote on.
You know, sometimes, and in fact, I remember from the Zika debate over the summer that Republicans who are opposed to abortion do fall into some sensitive debating issues. Marco Rubio on the issue about whether a baby's infected with Zika, you should allow the women to abort the babies. That is something that, at least public opinion polls, it shows a very difficult argument for Republicans to make.
I mean, I think that Rubio stood strong with life when he was asked that. But again, I mean, I believe in life. And when you start talking about all these other cases, I mean, what's the % of abortions that occur when Zika's involved or rape or incest? But I think the left really hypes that up to be able to get their argument out
All right,
there.
let's take another quick break. But when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests, plus what some of our viewers are saying about the prospect of bringing the Atlanta Braves to spring training to Northport. So stay with us. Welcome back. What does the future hold for Planned Parenthood as Donald Trump prepares to take the oath of office and enter the White House? Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. I know what you want Donald Trump to do. How quickly do you think he will do it? How quickly do you think Congress will act?
I'm not sure. They have a lot of stuff to do, right? They look at Obamacare. They got to repeal that. You look at the border. They got to start building that wall. So there's a laundry list of stuff that we have to fix that's been imposed, and sometimes without even Congress, through an executive order in the past 8 years that we're going to be fixing. So I think this is on the list. I'm not sure how high up or how long it's going to take, but we're going to get to it.
Mary, if you are opposed to the defunding of Planned Parenthood, what kind of strategy do people have to prevent it from happening?
Well, I think that it's going to be a very tough fight, but I believe that Democrats in Congress will stand up as much as they can.
But they have no power to stop the legislation at this point, including in the Senate.
That is true. So it's going to be a tough battle, and people are going to have to speak up. They're going to have to let Americans are going to have to let their congresspeople know how they feel about this. And Planned Parenthood, I believe their doors will stay open. Planned Parenthood is needed, and we may see some setbacks during the next 4 years, but I believe that will get turned around at a later time.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. But before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about last night's topic. Will Northport become the new home of the Atlanta Braves spring training? With Collier County dropping its bid for the team, South Sarasota County seems the most likely destination. Here is what some of you are saying. Kevin Rouse writes, I am for this even with the pros and cons. Spring training is only 1 month, but after March, minor league season starts. Also, the stadium can be used for the NCAA or high school tournaments, as well as Ed Smith and Charlotte Sports Park are. Jonathan Michael writes, Disney has no problem getting rid of the Braves. Spring training is not the economic driver it claimed to be, especially when they expect us to build the stadium and they expect to keep the ticket sales. And E.J. McLeod writes, I am just glad I don't get to make the final decision. No matter what happens, there will be very big positives and very big negatives to work out. I just hope the city and county do the right thing for residents. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, and I bet a few of you might, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news7. And FYI, want to watch past Roundtable discussions? They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Thank you to our guests for being here tonight. Mary Klepper is the state committee woman for the Sarasota County Democratic Party, as well as president of the Democratic Club of Sarasota. And Christian Ziegler is state committee man for the Republican Party of Sarasota and running for state party chair.